Welcome to Alderwood Community Church. My name is Ethan.
And my name's Nathaniel.
There's just a few minutes left before service starts, so we want to highlight what's going on in the ministries around the church.
If this is your first time joining us, we're so glad that you chose to be here. Here at Alderwood, we seek to follow Jesus through worshiping together, serving together, and living life together so that we can influence this world to a relationship with Christ.
We'd love it if you filled out a Connect card on the ACC app so that we can get you more information about how to get involved here at Alderwood. Even if you're not new, the ACC app is really good for finding out about upcoming events, getting sermon notes, and even giving online.
Also, you can RSVP through the app. To get the app, all you have to do is type ACC app to 77977.
If you're thinking about RSVPing for one of the services, but you have small kids, you can check out our 11 o'clock service. It's specially designed for parents with small children. Additionally, we've got online videos on YouTube or on the alderwood.cc website. Each one is a lesson that connects to God's Word, and they're really interactive and fun for kids to listen along to.
At the Compassion Center, about 2 weeks ago, we had our biggest night ever. We served about 51 neighbors. Also, they just added one more day for donations to make donating easier, so people can now donate on Tuesday and Saturday.
That's really cool. When COVID first hit, I was volunteering at the Linwood Food Bank, and I saw what a great need there was in our community for this kind of thing. Most of the donations that are used at the Compassion Center come from people like us. So it's really important that we're giving, and it's easier than ever to give.
Hi there, if you're just joining us, welcome. My name's Nathaniel.
And I'm Ethan.
And thank you for joining us. If you'd like to be more connected with us here at Alderwood, feel free to fill out a Connect form. You can find the form at alderwood.cc/connect form or on the Alderwood app.
You can also use the Alderwood app or the website to do online giving. It's one of the ways that we show worship here at Alderwood. Today, Pastor Wyatt is going to be continuing our sermon series in Proverbs. It's a series that explores biblical wisdom for everyday topics. So please stand and join us in worship.
Well, good morning, Alderwood. We're so thankful that you're joining us this morning. Wherever you are, I want to invite you to stand and sing with us as we give God the praise and the glory that He is worthy of. Let's sing together as we sing, "Praise the Lord, ye heavens." Here we go. 1, 2.
Church, let's sing praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, heavens adore Him. Praise Him, angels in the high. Sun and moon rejoice before Him. Praise Him, all the stars alive. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, for He has spoken. His mighty voice obey. Laws which never shall be broken. For the guidance He hath made. See that all creation. All creation join the song of praise. Let every tongue declare His mighty ways. We will sing of your goodness and mercy all of our days. Sing these words, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, for He is glorious. Never shall His promise fail. God God of our salvation. Hosts on high, its power proclaim. Heaven and earth and all creation, light and magnify His name. All creation join the song of praise. Let every tongue declare His mighty ways. We will sing of Your goodness and mercy all of our days. Sing, we will sing of Your goodness and mercy all of our days. One more time. We will sing of Your goodness and mercy all of our days.
We're creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. From north to south and east to west, we hear Christ be magnified. Be magnified. Were the whole earth echoing His eminence, His name would burst from sea and sky. From rivers to the mountain tops, we hear Christ be magnified. In your homes now, why don't you sing with us? Christ be magnified in me. Come on. We're singing, oh, Christ be magnified. Just let His praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. We're singing, oh, Christ be magnified in the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart is made to cry, then in one enraptured hymn of praise we sing, Christ be magnified. Be magnified, oh yes, we're singing, oh, Christ be magnified. Just let His praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. We're singing, oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Yeah. Be magnified, God. Be magnified, Jesus. And I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship You. And if it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause You're there too. And I won't be formed by feelings. I hold fast to what is true. 'Cause if the cross brings transformation, then You can't hang me there with You. Yes, God, 'cause death is just a doorway into resurrection life. And if I join You in Your sufferings, then I join You in You rise. And when You return in glory with all the angels and the saints, my song will still be singing. My song will be the same. We're singing, oh, May the cry of our hearts now, as we sing Christ be magnified in our life, be that God would search us, that he would know us, that he would know our hearts and cleanse us of anything impure. Lord, thank you for Jesus, the one who does this for us. Lord, we lay everything we have down before you on the altar. Lord, thank you for meeting us here. Let's sing this. If the altar's where you need us, take me there, take me there. If you're looking for an offering, it's right here. My life is here. I'll be a living sacrifice for you. You're a fire, the refiner. I want to be consumed. I want to be tried by fire. Purified. You take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life.
If your glory wants to come in, let it fall. We want it all. But your fire is consuming. In this place, set it ablaze. I'll be a living sacrifice for you. Fire, fire. I wanna be consumed. I wanna be tried by fire. Purified. You take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life. I wanna be tried by fire. Purified. You take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life.
So clean my hands, purify my heart. I wanna burn for you, only for you. Take my life as a sacrifice. I wanna burn for you, only for you. We sing it. Clean my hands, purify my heart. I wanna burn for you, yes, and only for you, Jesus. Take my life as a sacrifice.
I wanna burn for you.
Only for you. I wanna be tried by fire, purified. You take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life. I wanna be tried by fire, purified. You take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life.
All right, hey Alderwood, great to be back with you, and welcome back to our series in the book of Proverbs called Practical Wisdom for Everyday Followers of Jesus. And that is exactly what we're looking at here in this 5-week series, is what does it take to be wise as a follower of Jesus. And this is so important for a number of reasons. One, this is God's world, and we need to have wisdom to know how to thrive in it that comes from him. And two is that we've been called as followers of Jesus to represent Jesus here on earth. And so what we do and what we say and how we represent ourselves, it does not just reflect on us, it reflects on Jesus. And so to represent him well, we need wisdom. And our definition of wisdom that we've been using in this series, we're going to put it up for you right now as we begin, because we have to know what wisdom is before we can become wise. And that is this: biblical wisdom is applying the knowledge of who God is and the way he has ordered his universe to the way you live your life. It's taking what we know about who God is, his character, the way he made this world, and it's taking that knowledge and it's applying it to the way we live. And that's exactly what we're going to do today in this message, and we're going to do that in the topic of sexuality. This is a controversial topic. I don't know if you've noticed, but in our world today, we don't all agree on sexuality. There's a lot of opinions out there. There's a lot of people who really think that there's other groups that are wrong. You've probably noticed this. And today what we're going to ask is, what does the Bible teach us about wisdom and sexuality? What does Proverbs have to say about what it looks like to live in this area of our life wisely? And I hope that God is going to give us something really important here as we look at the book of Proverbs. I want to offer just a couple disclaimers before we begin because of how controversial this topic is. Here's the first one. We all come from different situations. People who are listening to this message right now, there's some of us that are married, some of us that are single, men, women. There's people with different sexual orientations. There's people with different histories. There's people who, have a generally positive view of sexuality. And there's people where sexuality is the single most hurtful thing in your life. We come from all over the place. And I only have the situation that I have, but really in this message, I don't want you to hear my opinion. I want you to see what God says. And I really do believe that God's wisdom has something for all of us, no matter where we come from. The second disclaimer is this, is that the book of Proverbs is written in the context of a father giving wise counsel to his son. And so the way that Proverbs does this is that in this advice to a son, it personifies a number of different things in female characters. So as you read the book of Proverbs, you'll notice that wisdom is personified as a woman, that folly is personified as a woman. And there's actually a third thing that gets personified as a woman in this book, and that is sexual temptation. And so there's this character in the book of Proverbs, the adulteress, and she is the personification of sexual temptation itself. And the reason why you have to know this is because if you miss that, then especially for women who read Proverbs and who hear messages on Proverbs, it can kind of sound a little weird. Like there's this male character who's trying to strive to be pure, and then the female character is always the one trying to tempt him. And it kind of gives you this picture of well, does the Bible think that men are generally trying to do right sexually, and that women generally are trying to, seduce them away? And that is actually not at all what's going on here. What's going on here is that this is written to a son, and sexual temptation itself is personified as a woman. So the message of Proverbs is not that all women are temptresses. The message is that sexual temptation is going to try to lure you away. Okay, so with that in mind, here's how we're going to look at the wisdom of Proverbs. We're going to look at 3 myths of our modern culture, 3 things that our modern culture believes about sexuality, and then we're going to look at what Proverbs and what the Bible has to say to give us the truth in those areas. And so as we jump into myth number 1 here, I'm actually going to ask you to get involved right now, wherever you are, wherever you're watching this, whether you're with your family, whether you're on your own. I want you to think for a second about this question. What do you think the world outside of the church thinks that Christians believe about sex, right? If you just ran into somebody on the street, somebody who has no church background, and asked them, what do you think Christians believe about sex? What are some of the things that you believe that you might hear in response to that? So if you're with somebody, maybe have a conversation about that. If you're on your own, just think about it. If you're watching the live service right now, feel free to leave a comment, share some thoughts. What does the world think that Christians believe about sex? Go ahead. Well, you might have come up with a number of different things, but here's where I want to focus on with you right now. Myth number one, I think that the world believes that Christians think sex is bad. Okay, right? There's this idea that essentially our culture knows that sex is fun, that it's great, that all of us should be having sex, and the Christians are kind of the killjoys of the whole thing, and they're always trying to get us to think about how sex is wrong, that we should feel bad about having sex, that we should feel like sex is dirty or just something that we shouldn't talk about. And this myth is so important to recognize because honestly, as Christians, we play into it every once in a while. Sometimes as Christians, all we can do is talk about what we shouldn't do. All we say is what's bad when it comes to sex. And we forget that the truth is actually not that sex is bad, but that sex is God's idea. Right? The truth is that Christians should believe that sex is a great thing created by God. Okay? The Bible teaches us that God is a fan of sex. He came up with it. He likes it, and we should too. Let's take a look at a couple verses here. We're going to start back in Genesis. Okay, Genesis teaches us the way that the world ought to be. And one of the things that we see in Genesis is that before sin ever enters the world, when things are the way they're supposed to be, sex is a part of that, right? God creates Adam and Eve, and then he tells them to be fruitful and multiply. That means sex, if you missed that, okay? So he says, go have sex, and then we get this awesome verse, one of my favorites in the whole Bible. It says this, it says that Adam and his wife were both naked, and yet they felt no shame, okay? The Bible teaches us that without sin, sex is nothing to be ashamed of, right? It is a great part of God's universe. Christians don't think sex is bad. They believe that it's God's idea. And yet, we do know that the Bible has some more things to say about sex. We're going to get to that. But when we look at the book of Proverbs, we see Proverbs take this knowledge that we have of the world, the knowledge that God created sex to be good, and the way that we see Proverbs apply that to our life is that it celebrates sex in the right context. Let's look at Proverbs 5:18 and 19. It says this. It says, may you rejoice in the wife of your youth, a loving doe, a graceful deer. May her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Proverbs is not ashamed of sex, okay? It's all for it. In fact, Proverbs is not even afraid to talk about boobs in church, okay? Don't blame me. That's in the Bible. Okay, Proverbs is saying, look, sex is awesome. Be intoxicated with it. Just do it within the context of marriage between two spouses. That is the message of the Bible. Just before this passage, we get an awesome euphemism. It's one of my favorites in the Bible. It says this. This is another thing it says about having sex in marriage. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Do you get it? Okay, here's what it's saying. Enjoy sex within marriage. Okay, look, there's nothing wrong with drinking water. Drinking water is awesome. Just drink water from your own cistern. And here's the deal. We're gonna push into some other myths, but I do want to address kind of the elephant in the room here. And that is that if you're here and you're single, you're not married, this particular piece of wisdom is not overly helpful for you, right? Like if you're married and you hear Proverbs say, drink water from your own cistern, you're like, great. If you're single, you're like, look, drinking water from your own cistern sounds awesome. I don't have a cistern. Like, what am I supposed to do? You know, like, I've never been particularly good at talking to cisterns. I'm not sure that any cisterns are really even interested in me. There was this one cistern once that I thought wanted to be my cistern, but then it became someone else's cistern. And now I'm not sure that I'm ever going to have a cistern. And so what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to get my water? And that's a very good question, and it's one that we're going to get to. We need to move on to myth number 2 to see what we have to say to that. Okay, myth number 2. And once again, I actually want to invite you into this as we think together. I just had you talk about what you think the outside world believes Christians think about sex. Now I'm going to ask you this. What do you think the world outside of the church, our modern culture, what are some of the things that they believe about sex? Just the random person on the street, the person who did not grow up in church, the person who just exists in our world today, what are some of the beliefs that they have about sex? Go ahead and brainstorm with the people you're with. Think if you're on your own. Write a comment if you're in the live service. Go ahead and take a little bit of time right now to think about that. Well, hey, there's no one right answer to that question. And maybe you came up with a bunch of different things. I hope so. Here's what I want us to hone in on here as the modern cultural myth about sex, at least one of them, and it's this. It's myth number 2. It's that sexual fulfillment is necessary for human well-being, okay? Sexual fulfillment is necessary to be a full, satisfied human being. To be somebody who's thriving in life, you have to be sexually fulfilled. And this message is everywhere in movies, in television, in advice columns and celebrity culture, and honestly, even within the church. Sometimes in the church, we buy this as well. We talk about marriage like it's the end-all, be-all of human existence. Like you can't possibly be a fully satisfied human being if you're not married. And I mean, think about what this does to our teenagers. I mean, man, teenage boys in particular, every teenager thinks that their life is currently in a state where things are tough and like all the good stuff is yet to come. And then one day they're going to have sex and life will be complete. And for some of us teenage boys, we actually never grow out of that. But here's the problem. It's not true. Okay, that is not a real depiction of the human experience. Sex is good, but it is not everything. It can never be that. And so if we allow our idea of the ultimate human experience to be sex, we will forever miss what it means to be truly human. How do we know this biblically? Well, let's just start here. Okay, let's start with the list of Bible all-stars who were celibate. Okay, Elijah never had sex. Jeremiah never got married, never had sex. We have John the Baptist. He dressed in camel's hair and ate wild locusts and honey. Okay, you do the math. The Apostle Paul. He may have been married at one point, but for most of his ministry was a single man not having sex. And I feel like there's one more that we're missing. Oh yeah, Jesus. Okay, Jesus himself, the Son of God, the perfect and complete human being, the only man to ever live to be the full expression of what it means to be human. Jesus was a single celibate man who never had sex, and yet he claims to be able to offer us the fullness of life. He came so that we might have life and have it to the full. So what does Jesus know about what it means to be human that allows him to believe that we can have a full life and be complete and satisfied without having sex? Well, he knows what the Bible teaches, and let's take a look at that. Okay, the Bible teaches us that the ultimate expression of humanity is not sex, but that it's loving God and loving other people, right? In Genesis, human beings are put in the garden in relationship with each other, and yes, that is a marriage, but also in relationship with him. And this picture carries forward throughout the whole Bible that what we're made for, what we find completion in, is the way that we love God, we're in right relationship with him, and the way that we're in right relationship with each other. And then we get to Jesus, and what Jesus teaches us is that the two most important commandments are this, is that we love God with everything we have, that we love our neighbor as ourself. And when we're in right relationship with God, we're in right relationship with each other, that is what it means to be human. That is where fullness and satisfaction comes from. Now, can sex be a part of that? Of course, right? Sex can be a great part of what it looks like to be in right relationship with another human being in a marriage. But does it have to be a part of it? Does it have to be a part of what it looks like for you to be a complete person? It does not. The Bible will not let you think that. And in fact, the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 says something that sounds crazy to us. He says, look, I would prefer if everyone remained single. I would prefer if none of you got married, because it actually would be easier for you to follow God if you didn't have to deal with a marriage. And then he says, and yet, if you can't handle that, right, if you need to be married, then go ahead and be married. It's not wrong. But he says, I actually would prefer that you're single. And that just blows our mind today, and yet it makes sense if we understand that human experience, the fullness of it, is not found in sex. It's found in loving God and loving others. So how does the book of Proverbs apply that wisdom to our lives? When we know what it means to be human and where satisfaction is actually found, what is Proverbs going to warn us about? And this is all over the book, but I want to look at one section with you in Proverbs chapter 7, verses 21 to 23. It says this. It says, with persuasive words, she led him astray. And remember, this picture of the temptress is that of sexual temptation, right? So with persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once, he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Here's the picture that Proverbs wants you to get. It's that sexual temptation is going to look great. It's going to sound amazing. It is going to lure you in with the promise of life. And yet, in reality, what's going to happen is that you are just going to be like an ox walking to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a trap. Sexual temptation promises life. It says this is going to be amazing, this is going to be great, this is exactly what you need, exactly what you want. And yet, in reality, it only leads to death. It only leads to death for your soul. That's the trick of sexual temptation. It makes you believe it's going to be good when in reality it is destroying you. And listen here, nobody knows that truth better than somebody who has just given in to sexual temptation. Talk to the person who's addicted to pornography. Talk to the person who has been having an affair. Talk to the person who has been giving in to lustful thoughts, been pursuing a relationship that's not right. Like, you talk to them, and they know that this thing that seemed like it was the only thing that they needed to be full and complete, as soon as it's over, led to emptiness, shame, regret. This is what sexual temptation does to us and what Proverbs wants us to know. It wants us to have the wisdom to avoid that, to be able to see into the future and say, even though this seems right now, I know that it is not what is best for me down the road. That's what God wants you to see here. We're going to look at one more myth of modern culture. And this one is huge. This maybe is more ubiquitous culturally than anything else we've talked about. And this is myth number 3. It's that enlightened people should free themselves from the Bible's restrictions on sexuality, okay? It's this belief that, look, maybe it made sense at one time to believe the things that the Bible teaches. Ideas like, marriage is for life, and that marriage is between a man and a woman. Honestly, even that there's such a thing as a man and a woman. Like, these ideas that the Bible teaches, like, they maybe made sense at one point, but today we have moved past it. Like, we know that those were just made up by men to control people. And so the way that you find sexual freedom is by freeing yourself from the restrictions that the Bible places on you. This idea is everywhere culturally. Okay, this is the way that the world outside the church, and sometimes the world inside the church, sees what the Bible says about sex. It is a hindrance, and when you can set yourself free, you will be better off. This myth it is grounded in an idea that you have to understand. It is grounded in the idea that our sexual norms, that our rules about sex and our expectations of what sex should be, that it is all a social construct. And I know that you weren't expecting a sociology lesson today. I apologize for that, but it's so important to get this to understand the way that our world thinks, okay? It believes that rules about sex are social constructs. What is a social construct? I'm glad you asked. Here's what it is. This is the Merriam-Webster definition word for word. A social construct is an idea that has been created and accepted by the people in a society, okay? Understand that. It's an idea that was created by society and accepted by society. It's so important that you understand the difference between a social construct and objective reality, right? Social constructs aren't objective. They're just ideas that we came up with and all agree to. Here's an example. We have a lot of ideas around food in our culture. One of them is this. It's that when you eat a steak, you should eat it with a fork and a knife. Okay, you maybe never even realize that you believe that, but you do. Every time you've eaten a steak in your entire life, you have used a fork and a knife. Every time you're at a steak restaurant and you look around at people eating steak, they are using a fork and a knife. And yet, if you walked into the restaurant and they brought your, beautiful medium rare tenderloin out, and you just picked that thing up with your hands and started taking huge chunks of it off with your teeth, people would look at you weird, because you are violating a social construct that we all agree to. Like, you may not get invited back to the restaurant. The people who invited you out to dinner may never talk to you again because you violated a social construct. And yet, all the consequences of that are really social. Like, there's nothing objectively wrong about eating a steak with your bare hands. And yet, some of our other rules around food aren't social constructs. Like, we have another idea, which is that if you're going to order dinner, you'd be better off ordering a steak than you would be eating a bowl of concrete. It's also true. Like, if you are sitting at the dinner table with a big bowl of wet cement and you're just spooning big spoonfuls into your mouth, you are also going to get some weird looks from people. But that is not going to be the worst consequence that you face, because it's not just social construct. There is an objective reality behind the idea that you cannot eat concrete, right? Like, it doesn't matter what society believes about that. If you decide to eat a bowl of wet cement, you are going to have a bad day, because that is not the way the world works. Your body can't do it. You can't digest it. Doesn't matter what you think about it. That is just the objective truth. Okay, let's think about sex here. The world thinks that our rules about sex, our rules about marriage, our idea of gender, it's all social construct. It's stuff that we have made up. And what that means is that we can change all the rules. We can decide different things. And other than society judging you, there are no objective consequences to that decision. If you can set yourself free from the rules, you will be better off. And yet, the wisdom of the Bible is that sex and sexuality and gender, they're not just social construct. There is an objective reality to it. God created it. He made this world to be a certain way, and you can change your mind about that. You can go against the grain of the universe, but you should expect to get some splinters because God made it to be a certain way. Sex is designed for something. It is designed to permanently and inseparably bond human beings together. That's what God made it for, to take two people and make them one flesh. We get this from Genesis 2:24, where it teaches us that it says, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." When God made sex, he made it to do something, and you can use it for other things. You can decide to use sex for pleasure. You can decide to use sex to create intimacy between you and a bunch of other people. But because sex is designed for this permanent union of two people, it will have consequences if you use it for other things. Proverbs takes this knowledge, it applies it to our life, and this is what it wants us to realize, is that there are consequences to the way that you handle your sexuality that you cannot get out of. Look at Proverbs 6:27-29. Can a man scoop fire into his lap without his clothes being burned? Can a man walk on hot coals without his feet being scorched? Right? No, obviously. so is he who sleeps with another man's wife. No one who touches her will go unpunished. Proverbs wants you to know, like, look, you can decide to handle your sexuality however you want to, but you just need to know that if you use it outside of the context that God made it for, it's the same thing as scooping fire into your lap or walking on coals. It is not going to be good for you. It is going to harm you, and there's no way to get around that. The reality is that society can't write the rules about sex because God already did that. Like, all we can do in God's world is to understand him and the way he made the world and then live wisely with that information. We can't change the reality of the way the world is. And so Proverbs wants you to have the wisdom to understand what sex is, where it came from, how it was designed, so that you can choose to use that to live wisely. I want to close today by making sure that we leave here on the right terms. I think there is no topic where we feel more shame and guilt than when we get to sexuality. There are people who are listening to this who have just the deepest wounds when it comes to sexuality. There's people who right now are engaged in things that they know are wrong, that they have all kinds of shame and guilt about. And as you hear the wisdom of Proverbs and the wisdom of the Bible when it comes to sexuality, I want you to understand why God gives us wisdom. He doesn't give us wisdom so that we will feel bad about ourselves. Sometimes that's necessary to get us to do the right thing, but that's not the point. God gives us wisdom so that we can thrive in his world, so that we can have the life that he wants us to have. It's for our good that he gives us wisdom. And the last thing that I would want is for you to leave here with shame and guilt and yet not have the hope of the gospel. So let's remind ourselves of the truth of the gospel and how we see it in this. Some of us think that there's two categories of people. There's people who are sexual sinners, people who have made mistakes, who have done things they shouldn't do. There's people who have regrets sexually. And then there's people who are sexually pure. There's people who are living right sexually. And when we have that paradigm and we understand that we're in the group of sexual sinners, we're the people who have made mistakes and done things that are wrong, we feel all this shame that we're in this group and not the sexually pure group. But that is not the way the world is. We are all sexual sinners. There is not one of us who has not given in to the seduction of sexual temptation at some point. Whether you're straight, whether you're gay, whether you're married, single, whether you're young or old, every single one of us is in the category of sexual sinner. There are two categories, but the categories are this. Category one is Jesus. Category two is everybody else. And here's the hope of the gospel, is that even though we are in the category of sinner, even though we have made mistakes, is that Jesus offers us life that he earned for us, even though we have done things to bring death onto ourselves. It's that Jesus offers forgiveness, mercy, grace, and restoration for everybody who trusts him and walks with him. And that word restoration is so huge. He doesn't just offer forgiveness. He offers to make you new, to make you whole. And that's so important because some of us have sexual baggage that we actually don't need forgiveness for. There's some of us, though, that have baggage because somebody else has sinned against us. And Jesus offers hope for that as well. He offers to be able to make you new through his Spirit, through the truth of who he is and what he's done for you. Jesus can heal even the most broken of us. That is the truth of the gospel, and we need to hear it more than ever when we think about sexuality. Church, I'm going to leave you with this. Hebrews 4:15 and 16. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to emphasize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Pay attention to this. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. And church, that's my prayer for you as we close, is that you would approach God's throne of grace with confidence, knowing Jesus understands everything you go through, that he is willing to forgive, that he loves you and wants what is best for you. Church, have a great week. Thanks for joining us.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him in his presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all. Yes, I do, God. All to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender all.
Oh, to Jesus I surrender. Humbly at his feet I bow. Worldly pleasures all forsaken, take me, Jesus, take me now.
I surrender all. Yes, I surrender all. And all to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender all. And all to Jesus I surrender. Make me Savior, wholly mine. Let me feel thy Holy Spirit. Truly know that thou art mine. Yes, I surrender all. I surrender all. And all to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender all. Yes, all to Jesus I surrender, Lord. I give myself to thee. Fill me with thy love and power. Let thy blessings fall on me. I surrender all. I surrender all to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender all to thee. Yes, all to thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender all. May that be our prayer as we leave this time. We're so thankful that you took this time to be with us and worship with us. We hope that you have a great week, church, and we'll see you next Sunday.